The rain pounded against the cracked windows of the old house, each drop sounding like a tiny hammer against the fragile glass. Lila pulled her sweater tighter around her shoulders, the chill in the air seeping into her bones. It wasn't just the cold that made her shiver. It was the silence, the kind of silence that comes when the world has turned its back on you. She set her coffee mug down on the uneven wooden table, the liquid inside long gone cold. Her fingers traced the edge of the family photo she couldn't bring herself to put away. Smiling faces stared back at her. Her parents, her sister, Rachel and herself, squeezed together in a hug at some long-ago birthday. Back when she still believed family meant safety. Back before they decided she wasn't worth keeping. A gust of wind howled through the gaps in the walls, making the single bulb overhead sway. The shadows danced like ghosts. And for a moment, Lila let herself remember the night everything shattered. "You did. What?" Rachel's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. Lila tightened her grip on her chair, the polished wood of her parents' dining table smooth beneath her fingertips. The air in the room had gone thick, like the moment before a storm breaks. "Bought a house," Lila repeated, forcing her voice steady. "It's not much right now, but with some work, a $900 house." Her mother's laugh was brittle. "That's not a house, Lila. That's a shack, a death trap." Her father hadn't said a word. He just stared at her, his face unreadable. That was worse than the yelling. Rachel leaned forward, her manicured nails tapping against the table. "Do you have any idea how selfish this is? Mom and Dad were going to help me with the retreat center. That's a real investment. And you throw your money away on this?" Lila's chest ached. She knew Rachel's retreat was important to her. But this house, as broken as it was hers. For the first time in her life, something was hers. "I'm not asking you to understand," she said quietly. "I'm just asking you to respect my choice." Her mother's chair screeched as she stood. "Respect? You want respect after this?" Her voice trembled with something worse than anger. Disappointment. "We raised you better. Family supports. Family. But you only think about yourself." Lila's vision blurred. She blinked hard. "That's not true." Her father finally spoke. "Then prove it." His voice was low, final. "Walk away from this mistake. Give Rachel the money instead." The room spun. Lila looked at Rachel, waiting for her to say something, anything to defend her. But Rachel just stared back, her eyes cold. Lila swallowed the lump in her throat. "No." The word hung in the air, heavy as lead. Her father stood. "Then you don't need us." The silence that followed was worse than any shoutings. Lila's hands shook as she pushed back from the table. She didn't look at any of them as she walked out. The front door clicked shut behind her, and just like that, she was alone. A loud thud from upstairs snapped Lila back to the present. The old house settled at night, groaning like a living thing. She wiped her cheeks, surprised to find them wet. She stood, the floorboards creaking under her weight, and walked to the window. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, the moon peeking through the clouds. A knock at the door made her jump. Who would be here at this hour? Her heart pounded as she crossed the room. The door groaned as she pulled it open. Rachel stood on the porch, her designer coat soaked through, her mascara smudged. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Rachel whispered, "I need your help." The knock came again, harder this time, rattling the loose doorknob Lila kept meaning to fix. She stood frozen in her dimly lit hallway, the peeling wallpaper suddenly fascinating as she tried to steady her breathing. 3 months. 3 months since they'd last spoken. And now Rachel was here, standing on her splintered porch, in the middle of a thunderstorm. "Lila, please." Rachel's voice cracked through the door, barely audible over the rain drumming on the rusted roof. "I know you're home. Your car's out front." Lila's fingers hovered near the deadbolt, that vintage Mustang she'd restored herself. The one her father called a waste of money, now betrayed her presence. She could see Rachel's silhouette through the frosted glass, shoulders hunched against the weather, looking smaller than Lila. Remembered. The floorboards creaked as she shifted her weight. Part of her wanted to turn away, to let Rachel stand out there all night. But the way Rachel's voice had broken on that single word, "Please," it dug under her skin like a splinter. With a sharp twist, Lila unlatched the lock. The door swung open to reveal Rachel in a state Lila had never seen before. Her sister's usually pristine blonde hair hung in wet ropes around her face. The Burberry trench coat, a birthday gift from their parents last year, was soaked through, clinging to her trembling frame. But it was Rachel's eyes that startled Lila most. Red-rimmed and hollow, like she hadn't slept in days. "You look terrible," Lila said before she could stop herself. A humorless laugh escaped Rachel's chapped lips. "Yeah, well." She wiped rainwater from her forehead, leaving a smudge of mascara near her temple. "Turns out retreat centers don't run themselves." Lila crossed her arms, leaning against the doorframe. The cold night air rushed in, making her shiver. "What do you want, Rachel?" The question hung between them, heavy with everything unsaid. Rachel's gaze darted past Lila, taking in the exposed beams in the hallway. The stacks of drywall, waiting to be installed. A flicker of something crossed her face. Judgment? Surprise? Before she met Lila's eyes again. "Can I come in?" Rachel's voice was barely above a whisper. "Just for a minute." Lila hesitated. This house was hers. Her sanctuary, her rebellion. Letting Rachel inside felt like surrendering the one space they hadn't poisoned. But the way Rachel swayed slightly on her feet, the unnatural pallor of her skin. "Fine." Lila stepped aside. "But wipe your feet. I just refinished these floors." Rachel's designer boots left wet prints on the hardwood as she shuffled inside. Lila watched her take in the transformation. The walls she'd stripped and repainted, the antique fixtures she'd salvaged from flea markets, the kitchen she'd rebuilt from YouTube tutorials. The house was still rough around the edges, but it no longer looked like the death trap her mother had described. "Wow," Rachel breathed, running a hand along the restored banister. You've done a lot." Lila ignored the backhanded compliment. "Sit." She gestured to the thrifted sofa, its cushions patched but clean. "I'll make tea." The kitchen provided a welcome escape. Lila filled the kettle with shaking hands, the water sloshing over the rim. Why was Rachel here? After everything, the ceramic mugs clattered as she set them down too hard, the sound echoing through the quiet house. When she returned with the steaming tea, Rachel was perched on the edge of the sofa, staring at her phone. She looked up quickly, shoving the device into her pocket, but not before Lila caught sight of the screen. A missed call from Dad. "Here." Lila thrust a mug at her. "It's chamomile. Not that fancy imported stuff you like, but it'll warm you up." Rachel wrapped her hands around the cup. Her French manicure chipped at the edges. "Thanks." She took a sip and grimaced slightly. Probably at the store brand tea bags Lila used, but didn't complain. Silence settled between them, thick and uncomfortable. Lila studied her sister's profile in the lamplight. Rachel had lost weight since she'd last seen her. The sharp angles of her cheekbones more pronounced. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, the kind that couldn't be hidden with concealer. "So," Lila said finally. "What's this about?" Rachel set the mug down carefully on the coffee table. When she spoke, her voice was so quiet Lila had to lean forward to hear. "The retreat. It's failing." A bitter laugh bubbled up in Lila's throat, but she swallowed it down. And I need your help." Rachel's hands twisted in her lap. The diamond engagement ring she always flaunted noticeably absent. "The investors are pulling out. The contractors walked off the job last week. We're over budget, behind schedule." Her voice broke. "Mom and Dad poured everything into this, Lila. Everything." Lila felt something cold settle in her stomach. "Let me guess. They sent you to ask for money." Rachel's head snapped up. "No, I mean, not exactly." She took a shaky breath. "I know you don't have cash to spare, but you have skills. You built all this." She gestured around them. "You understand construction, budgeting." "Oh my God." Lila stood abruptly, nearly knocking over her tea. "You want me to fix your mess? After what you all did to me?" Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "I know how this sounds, but we're family, Lila. Doesn't that mean something?" "Family." Lila's voice rose, echoing off the exposed brick walls. "Family doesn't kick you out for wanting something of your own. Family doesn't call you selfish for chasing a dream." She pointed to the front door, her hand trembling. "You all made your choice. Now, live with it." Rachel stood slowly, her movements stiff, like an old woman's. "You're right." She wiped her cheeks with the back of her hand. "I shouldn't have come. She started toward the door, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Lila watched her go, a storm of emotions raging in her chest, anger, resentment, and beneath it all, that stupid, traitorous instinct that had always made her protect Rachel when they were kids. Wait, Rachel turned, hope flickering in her red-rimmed eyes. Lila crossed her arms tight against her chest. I'll look at your project. One time. That's it. The relief on Rachel's face was almost painful to see. Thank you. You won't regret this. I promise. Lila snorted. I already do. She opened the door, letting in a gust of rainy wind. Text me the address. I'll come by tomorrow. Rachel hesitated in the doorway. Lila. I really am sorry. Lila met her sister's gaze, seeing for the first time how much Rachel had aged in these past months. Yeah, she said softly. Me too. The door clicked shut behind Rachel, leaving Lila alone with her thoughts and 2 cooling cups of tea. Outside, the storm raged on. The rain had stopped, but the air still carried the weight of the storm. As Lila stood in the empty house, listening to Rachel's car pull away, the silence that followed was suffocating. She picked up the 2 untouched mugs of tea, the ceramics, cold against her fingers, and poured them down the sink. The chamomile leaves swirled in the drain before disappearing. Just like Rachel's apology, hollow, temporary. She leaned against the kitchen counter, her reflection warped in the stainless steel of the fridge she'd salvaged from a junkyard. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, her hair a tangled mess from running her hands through it too many times tonight. She looked as exhausted as she felt. A sharp crack echoed from upstairs, the old house settling. Or maybe another piece of it, giving up. Lila flinched, then let out a slow breath. She wasn't used to the sounds yet. 3 months in, and the place still startled her at night. She grabbed the flashlight from the drawer. The wiring in the upstairs hallway was still spotty, and made her way to the 2nd floor. Each step groaned under her weight. The wood protesting like it, too, was reluctant to face what lay ahead. Her bedroom was the only finished space in the house. She'd torn out the moldy carpet, sanded the floors, and painted the walls a soft grey, something neutral, something that didn't remind her of her old bedroom back home, the one her parents had turned into a guest room the week after she left. She dropped onto the mattress, no bed frame yet, and pulled her knees to her chest. The flashlight's beam cut through the dark, casting long shadows on the walls. Outside, the wind rattled the loose pane in the window, a rhythmic tap, 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 like someone knocking, asking to be let in. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text. Rachel. Tomorrow 10 a.m. at 12:47, Willow Lane. Thank you again. Lila stared at the screen. She should ignore it. Should text back. No, actually I changed my mind. Should block Rachel's number and pretend tonight never happened. But she didn't. Instead, she tossed her phone aside and reached for the notebook she kept under her pillow. The pages were filled with sketches, floor plans, furniture designs, garden layouts, all the things she wanted to do with this place, all the things she would do, even if no one believed in her. She flipped to a fresh page and started writing. Things to ask Rachel. Budget details. Contractor issues. Timeline. Her pen hovered over the page. Then, against her better judgment, she added, "Why did you really come tonight?" Morning light. Sunlight streamed through the gaps in the curtains, pulling Lila from a restless sleep. She dreamed of her mother's voice, sharp and disapproving. "You'll regret this, Lila. You'll come crawling back." She rubbed her eyes, pushing the memory away. The house was quiet now. No groaning pipes or creaking floors. Just the distant chirp of sparrows in the overgrown yard. Her phone buzzed again. Another text, but this time, it wasn't Rachel. Unknown number. Saw your renovation posts online. Impressive work. You available for consultation? Lila sat up, frowning. She hadn't posted anything about the house. Not yet. Then she remembered. Last week, she'd uploaded a single before and after of the kitchen to a local DIY forum, just to prove to herself that she could do this. She typed back, cautious. Lila. Depends on the project. What are you looking for? The reply came instantly. Unknown. Number. Historic home restoration. Big budget. Needs someone who understands salvage work. You free to meet this week? Lila's pulse quickened. This could be real money. Enough to finish the plumbing, maybe even hire help for the roof. But then she thought of Rachel, of Willow, Lane, of the way her sister had looked at her last night, like Lila was her last hope. She exhaled sharply and replied, Lila. Can't this week, maybe next. She set the phone down before she could regret it. Willow Lane. The retreat center was worse than she'd imagined. Lila stood in the half-finished lobby, her boots crunching on discarded drywall screws. The space was supposed to be luxurious, high ceilings, floor-to-ceiling windows, a grand staircase spiraling up to the guest suites, but the windows were smudged and unsealed. The staircase missing entire sections of railing, and the air smelled like damp wood and mildew. Rachel hovered near the doorway, arms crossed like she was trying to hold herself together. The contractors walked off when the check started bouncing, she said quietly. Dad thought he could manage the rest himself. But Lila didn't need her to finish. She could see the mistakes everywhere. The uneven tile work, the poorly installed electrical panels, the warped floorboards where water had seeped in. This wasn't just behind schedule. This was a disaster. She turned to Rachel. How much did you invest? Rachel's throat worked. Everything. A door slammed somewhere deeper in the house, followed by a familiar voice barking orders. Lila stiffened. Her father appeared in the hallway, his sleeves rolled up, his hands streaked with grime. He froze when he saw her. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then her father's gaze flicked to Rachel. You brought her here. Rachel lifted her chin. She's the only one who can help. Lila expected anger. Expected him to yell, to tell her to leave. Instead, her father's shoulders slumped. He looked old, tired, defeated. He met Lila's eyes. Well, he said gruffly. Can you fix this? Lila looked around at the crumbling dream around her. At her sister's desperation, at her father's pride, finally cracked. She swallowed hard. I can try. The retreat center's exposed beams cast long shadows across the warped floorboards as Lila ran her fingers along a cracked support column. Her father hovered a few feet away, arms crossed, watching her every move with that same unreadable expression he'd worn since she was 15 and came home with a tattoo hidden beneath her sleeve. It's not just cosmetic, Lila said finally, brushing sawdust from her jeans. The foundation's shifting on the west side. See these cracks? She pointed to jagged lines, spiderwebbing up the wall. That's from improper drainage. You can't just slap drywall over this and hope for the best. Her father's jaw tightened. We followed the blueprints. Blueprints don't account for the sinkhole this place is practically built on. Lila pulled out her phone, illuminating the damp patch near the baseboard. The soil reports alone should have. We didn't get soil reports. Rachel's voice cut through the tension as she reappeared with 3 steaming coffees balanced precariously in her hands. The dark circles under her eyes had deepened since last night. The investors said they weren't necessary, that the land was proven stable. Lila accepted the coffee with a skeptical raise of her eyebrows. And you believe them? Rachel's gaze darted to their father. We didn't have much choice. A heavy silence settled over them. Lila took a sip. Black, no sugar. Exactly how she'd always taken it. The fact that Rachel remembered after all these months sent an unwelcome pang through her chest. Her father cleared his throat. So what's your solution then? Since you're the expert now. The dig stung, but Lila refused to flinch. First, we shore up the foundation with helical piers. Helical what? Metal supports drilled deep into stable soil. Lila explained through gritted teeth. Then we regrade the property's drainage. After that, we're another $100,000 in the hole with nothing to show for it. Her father threw his hands up, sending coffee sloshing over the rim of his cup. We're already 6 months behind schedule. The wedding parties have cancelled. The yoga retreat moved to Vermont. We need solutions. Lila, not more problems. Lila's grip tightened on her phone. You want a solution? Sell. The word hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Rachel made a choked noise. We can't just. You're in over your heads. Lila gestured to the water-stained ceiling tiles. This isn't a retreat center. It's a money pit. Cut your losses before the whole thing collapses. Literally. Her father's face darkened. This is your mother's retirement we're talking about. Our life savings. And whose fault is that? The words were out before Lila could stop them. The silence that followed was deafening. Rachel's phone buzzed loudly, shattering the moment. She glanced at the screen and paled. It's the bank again. Her father swore under his breath. Don't answer it. Lila watched the exchange with growing unease. How bad is the debt? The look her father and sister shared told her everything she needed to know. That evening, Lila sat cross-legged on her living room floor, blueprints and contractor estimates spread around her like a paper fortress. The numbers didn't lie. Even with emergency repairs, the retreat had maybe a 20% chance of turning a profit within 5 years. Her phone buzzed. The unknown number, again. Unknown. Still interested in that historic restoration. Owners willing to pay double for immediate availability. Lila chewed her lip. Double rates could mean $10,000 just for the consultation. Enough to finally fix her own roof. Enough to walk away from her family's mess forever. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard when another text came through, this time from Rachel. Rachel. Found something you should see. Meet me at the retreat tomorrow at dawn. Before Dad gets there. Attached was a blurry photo of paperwork. A contract maybe, with a familiar logo at the top. Lila zoomed in, her breath caught. Silverpine Development. The same company that had tried to buy her junk house 3 months ago for 10 times what she'd paid. The same company her father had done business with for years. What the hell were they doing involved in Rachel's retreat? The pre-dawn air clung to Lila's skin like damp gauze as she picked her way through the construction site, her flashlight cutting a narrow path through the debris. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hooted, a mournful sound that sent shivers down her spine. She checked her phone again. 5:17 a.m. Rachel was late. A rustling came from the unfinished kitchen. Lila froze, her pulse jumping. Rachel? No answer. Just the creak of loose plywood shifting in the wind. Then, a whimper. Lila's stomach dropped. She sprinted toward the sound, her boots crunching over discarded nails, and rounded the corner to find Rachel slumped against the sub-zero fridge she'd once bragged about installing. Her sister's usually pristine blouse was rumpled, one sleeve torn at the shoulder. A purpling bruise bloomed across her left cheekbone. What the hell happened? Lila crouched beside her, fingers hovering over the injury. Rachel batted her hand away. I'm fine, just tripped. Bullshit. Lila grabbed Rachel's chin, tilting her face toward the dim light. The knuckle marks were unmistakable. Who hit you? Rachel's breath hitched. She reached into her back pocket and pulled out a folded stack of papers, the edges torn as if yanked from someone's grasp. You were right about Silverpine. Lila unfolded the documents, her flashlight beam illuminating the damning letterhead. Silverpine Development, LC. Proposal for Willow Ridge Retreat acquisition. The dates made her blood run cold. This is from 8 months ago, before you broke ground. Rachel nodded miserably. Dad signed an exclusivity agreement. If the retreat failed within 18 months, Silverpine got first right of purchase. At 40% market value, the pieces clicked together with awful clarity. He sabotaged you. It wasn't supposed to go like this. Rachel's voice cracked. The investors Dad found. They were Silverpine fronts. They insisted on cheap materials, rushed timelines. She gestured weakly at the water-stained walls. All this was engineered to fail. Lila's hands shook as she flipped to the last page. Her father's signature glared up at her in familiar slanted script. Right beside another name, she recognized. The CEO of Silverpine, Marshall Graves. Her high school boyfriend's father. 3 cups of terrible gas station coffee later. The full story spilled out between Rachel's trembling fingers. Dad was desperate after the hardware store went under. She confessed, cradling her bruised face. The retirement accounts were empty. Then Marshall approached him with this surefire investment. She made air quotes with scraped-up fingers. All we had to do was take their money, build fast, and when it failed, you'd sell to Silverpine for pennies. Lila finished, and split the real profits under the table. Rachel nodded. Except Marshall double-crossed us. The bastard funneled the construction funds through shell companies, then called in the loans early. She pulled a crumpled notice from her pocket. Foreclosure warning dated yesterday. We have 14 days. Lila stared at the document, the legal jargon blurring before her eyes. All those years of her father lecturing about responsibility, about family loyalty, and he'd gambled everything on a shady backroom deal. Her phone buzzed. The unknown number again. Unknown. Graves here. Heard you're working on Willow Ridge. Let's talk. Of course, the mysterious, historic restoration client was Marshall Graves himself, testing her loyalties. Lila's thumb hovered over the delete button when Rachel grabbed her wrist. Wait! Her sister's eyes burned with sudden intensity. Play along. What? Get close to him. Rachel's grip tightened. Find proof he rigged this whole scheme. It's the only way to save Mom's house. Lila wrenched free. You want me to spy on Marshall Graves? Are you insane? Please. A tear cut through the dirt on Rachel's cheek. You're the only one he might actually talk to. Not after... She trailed off awkwardly. Not after senior year. Not after Lila had dated Drew Graves for 9 months before, discovering the family's shady land grabs. Not after she'd gone to the local paper with what she knew, only to watch the story get killed, and her relationship implode in spectacular fashion. The owl hooted again, closer now. Somewhere beyond the skeletal framing, the first hints of sunrise tinged the sky blood orange. Lila exhaled sharply through her nose. I'll meet him, but not for you. She jabbed a finger at the foreclosure notice. For Mom. Rachel opened her mouth, probably to say thank you, when a car door slammed outside. Both sisters froze. Footsteps crunched over gravel. Then her father's voice, tight with fury. Rachel, I know you're in there. The scent of bergamot and betrayal hung heavy in the air as Lila stepped into Silverpine Development's headquarters. Polished marble floors reflected the oversized chandelier above, each crystal teardrop catching the morning light like scattered diamonds. Everything here gleamed, everything except the memories scratching at the back of Lila's mind. You'll regret this. Drew Graves had hissed at her senior prom, his fingers digging into her wrist when she'd refused to retract her statements about his father's business practices. No one crosses my family. A receptionist with frost-pink nails eyed Lila's paint-splattered boots. You must be the contractor. Lila tightened her grip on the fake portfolio she'd assembled. Rachel's doctored blueprints mixed with her own, legitimate designs. I have a 9 o'clock with Mr. Graves. 3rd floor. The woman's smile didn't reach her eyes. Elevator to your left. The mirrored elevator walls showed Lila exactly how out of place she looked. Frayed flannel, messy bun, the stubborn set of her jaw that had always gotten her in trouble. She tugged at her collar, suddenly wishing she'd worn something other than the faint stain of motor oil on her sleeve from yesterday's generator repair. The doors slid open directly into an office, the size of her entire 1st floor, and there, behind a desk carved from what looked like a single giant sequoia, sat Marshall Graves. Time had been kind to him. Silver threaded his temples with distinguished elegance, and his tailored suit probably cost more than Lila's truck. But the eyes were the same, cold and calculating, like a biologist dissecting a specimen. Lila Carter. Marshall stood, extending a hand dotted with age spots. It's been, 6 years? 7. She shook his hand, noting the absence of a wedding ring. Drew had mentioned his parents' divorce during one of their few civil conversations post-breakup. You look well. Flattery won't land you this contract. His chuckle was all polished menace. Though I must admit, when my team said some rookie had salvaged that crack house on Elm into something habitable, I never imagined it was you. Lila's spine stiffened. He'd been watching her. Of course he had. She forced a smile and unrolled the blueprints across his desk. I understand you have a historic property in need of restoration. Marshall tapped a key on his laptop, and the wall-mounted screen lit up with an aerial view of Willow Ridge Retreat, Rachel's crumbling dream. Let's skip the charade. You're here because your family's drowning, and I'm the only one with a life raft. The air left Lila's lungs. Your father, Marshall continued, zooming in on the water-damaged event hall, was supposed to deliver this property to me months ago. Instead, I find out his estranged daughter, the one with the inconveniently strong moral compass, is poking around my investment. He steepled his fingers. So tell me, Lila, are you here to beg for mercy? or to finally learn how the real world works. A door clicked open behind her. Actually, came a familiar voice. She's here to see me. Lila turned slowly, her stomach plummeting to her scuffed boots. Drew Graves leaned against the doorframe. His once boyish features hardened into sharp angles. The dimple she'd kissed 100 times was gone, replaced by a thin scar, cutting through his left eyebrow. New since she'd last seen him. His tailored navy suit fit like armor. "Hello, Lila." His smile didn't reach those glacier blue eyes. "Miss, me." The conference room smelled of stale coffee and tension. Drew poured himself a glass of water from the carafe, the ice cubes clinking like tiny warning bells. "Dad says you've gotten into renovation." Lila kept her hands flat on the table to hide their trembling. "And you're, what? Vice president of screwing over small towns now." Ouch. Drew pressed a hand to his chest, in mock hurt. "I prefer director of acquisitions. Actually." He slid a business card across the table. The embossed silver lettering matched his father's. Lila didn't touch it. "Why bring me here, Drew? Really?" He leaned forward, the citrusy cologne triggering memories she'd rather forget. "Because unlike my father, I don't enjoy watching you suffer." His gaze dropped to her chipped nail polish. "I'm offering you a way out. Walk away from Willow Ridge, and I'll make sure you get paid for your time." "And my family." Drew's expression darkened. They made their bed. Lila studied his face, the tightness around his mouth, the way his thumb rubbed absently at that scar. This wasn't just business. This was personal. She pushed back from the table. "I need to see the original purchase agreement." "Why?" "Because if I'm going to fix your shoddy sabotage job, I need to know exactly how deep the rock goes." Drew's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then did something unexpected. He laughed. "Speaking of rot." He turned the phone toward her. Security footage showed Lila's father in the Willow Ridge lobby, screaming at a Silver Pine employee, while Rachel tried to pull him away. The timestamp read, 11:47 a.m. 20 minutes ago. "Looks like Daddy Dearest just assaulted one of my appraisers." Drew pocketed his phone. "Guess who's getting arrested right now?" Lila was halfway to the door when Drew grabbed her wrist. "Just like prom night. Last chance," he murmured, his breath warm against her ear. "Take the money and run, Lila. Or drown with them." She yanked free. "Go to hell." The elevator couldn't descend fast enough. Lila's phone buzzed with Rachel's frantic texts. "Rachel. Dad lost it. Rachel. Cops are here. Rachel. They're taking him in. Rachel. Lila, please answer." The lobby blurred as she sprinted to her truck. She just jammed the key in the ignition when her passenger door flew open. Rachel collapsed into the seat, her face streaked with tears and foundation. "They're charging him with assault and attempted bribery. Her voice broke. "He tried to pay off the appraiser to falsify reports." Lila peeled out of the parking lot. "Where's Mom?" "At the police station." Rachel clutched her seatbelt like a lifeline. "Lila." He had a gun. The world tilted. Lila white-knuckled the steering wheel as Rachel kept talking, the words tumbling out between sobs. "He didn't shoot anyone, but when the cops searched his car." Rachel pressed her palms to her eyes. "They're adding felony charges. He could go away for years." Lila's mind raced. Her father was many things. Stubborn, prideful, occasionally cruel, but he'd never been violent. This wasn't just desperation. This was a man with nothing left to lose. Her phone buzzed again. "Unknown. Number. Unknown. Told you you'd regret it." Attached was a photo of her father in handcuffs. The police station reeked of burnt coffee and despair. Lila paced the scuffed linoleum, her boots leaving faint tread marks on the decades of grime ground into the floor. Rachel sat slumped in a plastic chair, her face buried in her hands, the sleeves of her blouse streaked with mascara, where she'd wiped her tears. Through the reinforced glass window of the interrogation room, Lila could see her father, smaller somehow in the unforgiving fluorescent light. His hands cuffed to the table as a detective flipped through a file. "Mom's been in there for 40 minutes, Rachel whispered hoarsely. "What are they saying?" Lila pressed her palm against the cold glass. "Nothing good." The door to the observation room creaked open, and Lila's mother stepped out, her face ashen. For a woman who had always carried herself with quiet elegance, She looked hollowed out, her blouse wrinkled. Her pearl earrings the only remaining evidence of the life they'd had before all this. They're charging him with aggravated assault, illegal firearm possession, and attempted bribery. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled. They won't set bail until arraignment tomorrow. Rachel made a wounded noise. So he stays in jail tonight. Her mother nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line. Then, to Lila's surprise, she reached out and gripped her wrist. He wants to talk to you. Alone? Lila's pulse jumped. Me? Her mother's fingers tightened. There are things you don't know. Things I didn't even know until today. She glanced at Rachel, then back at Lila, her eyes pleading. Just listen to him. Please. The interrogation room smelled like sweat and metal. Lila's father didn't look up when she entered, his gaze fixed on his cuffed hands. The overhead light deepened the lines on his face, making him look decades older. You came, he said quietly. Lila pulled out the chair across from him, the legs screeching against the floor. Mom said you had something to tell me. He exhaled through his nose, a sound so familiar it made her chest ache. Silverpine didn't just want the retreat land. His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming. They wanted what's buried under it. Lila stilled. What are you talking about? Her father finally met her eyes. The original deed to Willow Lane, the one from 1924. It wasn't just empty land. There was a house there, a Graves house. The name hit her like a physical blow. Marshall's. Grandfather built it. Her father continued. Back when this town was just a railroad stop. But there was a fire in the 50s. Killed his first wife and youngest son. His knuckles whitened. The land was supposed to go to Marshall's uncle, but the will disappeared. The property sat vacant for years, until the county reassigned the parcel numbers and wiped the records. Lila's mind raced. So Marshall's been trying to reclaim it. Not just reclaim. Her father leaned forward, the chains rattling. Destroy. That fire was no accident, Lila. His grandfather set it for the insurance payout, but the investigation got buried when the railroad money came to town. If anyone found proof, the Graves empire crumbles. Lila finished, her mouth dry. Her father nodded. Marshall approached me last year with the retreat idea. Said if I helped him secure the land quietly, he'd make sure we never had money troubles again. His voice broke. I didn't know about the bodies, Lila. I swear to God, I didn't know. Lila's breath caught. Bodies? The fire wasn't the only thing they covered up. Her father's eyes were haunted. When the construction crew started digging, the foundation, they found bones, small ones. The room tilted. Lila gripped the table to steady herself. You're saying Marshall's grandfather? I'm saying Marshall paid off the crew to rebury them and keep working. Her father sagged in his chair. And when I tried to back out, he threatened your mother. Said he'd make sure she lost the house, the car, everything. His voice dropped to a whisper. Then he threatened you. Lila's skin prickled. Suddenly, Drew's reappearance made horrifying sense. Her father reached across the table as far as the cuffs would allow. There's a metal box buried under the northeast corner of the retreat's foundation. The crew foreman hid it there before Marshall could have him fired. It's got the original deed, photos from the fire, enough to prove everything. Lila stared at his outstretched hand. Why are you telling me this now? Because I can't protect you from in here. His voice cracked. And if Marshall thinks you know, the door burst open. A uniformed officer stepped in. Time's up. Her father's fingers brushed hers as they hauled him to his feet. Don't trust Drew, he hissed. No matter what he says. Then he was gone, leaving Lila alone with the weight of his confession. Rachel was waiting by the exit, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Well? Lila hesitated. Her father's warning echoed in her head, but if those bones were still on the property, we need to get back to the retreat, she said quietly. Tonight. Rachel's eyes widened. Why? Lila pushed open the station door, the cool night air hitting her face like a slap. Because I know how to bury Marshall Graves. The moon hung low over Willow Ridge Retreat, its pale light catching on the broken windows, like jagged teeth. Lila's shovel bit into the damp earth with a soft thunk, the sound too loud in the suffocating quiet. Rachel knelt nearby, her designer jeans now streaked with mud as she scraped at the soil with a trowel. Are you sure this is the right spot? Rachel whispered, her breath fogging in the chilly air. Lila wiped sweat from her brow with the back of her glove. Northeast corner of the foundation, 6 feet down. She drove the shovel in again. Dad was specific. A rustling came from the tree line. Both sisters froze. Probably just a raccoon, Rachel said, but her knuckles whitened around the trowel. Lila peered into the darkness. The retreat loomed behind them, its skeletal framing casting spiderweb shadows across the ground. Somewhere in those woods, something, or someone, was watching. She could feel it. The shovel struck metal with a resonant clang. Rachel gasped. "You found it!" Lila dropped to her knees, brushing away dirt to reveal a rusted lockbox about the size of a bread loaf. The latch resisted at first, then gave way with a squeal of protest. Inside lay 3 items. A yellow deed stamped Willow Lane Estate, 1924-2. A charred photograph of a woman and child, standing before a Victorian house 3. A bone, small, unmistakably human, wrapped in faded newspaper. Rachel recoiled. Oh God. Lila's pulse hammered in her throat as she unfolded the brittle newspaper. The headline screamed, "Local family perishes in suspicious blaze. Graves mansion destroyed. Railroad tycoon claims tragic accident." The article was dated July 18th, 1952. Beneath it, handwritten in cramped script, "He killed them for the insurance. The boy too. I saw him do it. E. Pritchett." Rachel made a strangled noise. That's a child's bone." Lila carefully rewrapped the gruesome evidence. "We need to call the police." A twig snapped behind them. "I wouldn't do that if I were you." Lila spun, instinctively shoving Rachel behind her, as a figure emerged from the shadows. Moonlight glinted off the pistol in his hand, and the fresh scar, cutting through Drew Graves's eyebrow. The retreat's unfinished lobby smelled of sawdust and fear. Drew paced before the boarded-up windows, the gun loose but ready in his grip. Rachel sat trembling on an overturned drywall bucket, while Lila stood between her and Drew. The lockbox clutched to her chest. "You always were too clever for your own good," Drew said, shaking his head. "I told Dad you'd figure it out." Lila's mouth tasted like copper. "How long have you known about the bodies?" "Since I was 12. Drew's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Granddad liked to drink. One night he told me the family secret. How great-grandpa torched the house for the insurance money, not realizing his mistress and bastard son were inside." Rachel made a small, horrified sound. Drew's grip tightened on the pistol. "That land should have been ours, but the county screwed up the parcel records after the fire. By the time Dad tracked it down, your family owned it." He gestured to the lockbox. "And now here you are, holding our extinction event." Lila edged closer to a stack of lumber where her shovel leaned. "Why kill them, Drew? They were already ruined." "Because he couldn't let it go." Drew's voice cracked with sudden fury. He jabbed the gun at Rachel. "Your father was supposed to take the payout and walk away. But then he got moral after finding those bones. Started talking to reporters." His free hand touched his scar, absently. "Dad doesn't tolerate loose ends." The pieces clicked together with awful clarity. "That's how you got this, isn't it?" Lila nodded to his scar. "When you refused to hurt my dad." Drew's expression twisted. "I was protecting you. If I hadn't intercepted that contractor your father paid to dig up the bones." A floorboard creaked upstairs. All 3 of them froze. Drew's head snapped toward the sound, the gun swinging away from Lila for one critical second. She lunged for the shovel. Chaos erupted. Lila swung the shovel in a wide arc, catching Drew across the ribs with a sickening thud. He staggered, but didn't go down, the gun barking as a bullet embedded itself in the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Rachel screamed, "Run!" Lila tackled Drew as he took aim at her sister. They crashed into a stack of drywall, the impact driving the air from Lila's lungs. Drew's elbow connected with her jaw, stars exploding behind her eyes. The gun skidded across the floor. Rachel dove for it just as the front door burst open. Floodlights blinded them all. "Police! Freeze!" Drew scrambled backward, blood trickling from his nose. "Thank God, these women attacked me." "Shut up, Graves." Detective Ruiz stepped into the light, her service weapon trained squarely on Drew's chest. "We've been listening to everything." She tapped her earpiece. "Got a whole SWAT team outside, waiting for your father." Lila spat blood, confused. How Her mother stepped from behind Ruiz, cell phone in hand. "You didn't really think I'd let you two come here alone, did I?" She hugged Rachel close, her eyes never leaving Drew. "Not after what your father told me." Drew's face went slack with realization. "You recorded us." Lila touched her jacket pocket and found her phone still running. The call timer showing 147:22. Her mother had been listening the entire time. Ruiz cuffed Drew none too gently. "Marshall Graves is in custody as we speak. As for you," she yanked him to his feet. "Let's see how you like being on the other side of a prison cell." Epilogue. 6 months later. Lila adjusted the final shelf in her now finished living room, the scent of fresh paint and lemon polish filling the air. Outside, her mother and Rachel laughed over picnic preparations in the backyard. The first family gathering since her father's release. The doorbell rang. Drew stood on her porch, his orange Diox jumpsuit replaced with a tailored suit, his parole officer hovering near the curb. Up close, Lila could see the toll prison had taken, the new hollows in his cheeks, the way his hands trembled slightly despite his calm expression. "You testifying against your father got me out early," he said, without preamble. "I owe you." Lila crossed her arms. "You owe me nothing. I did it for my family." Drew nodded, then reached into his jacket. Lila tensed, but he only produced a faded photograph. The same one from the lockbox, but intact. "My great-aunt hid this before the fire," he said quietly. "There's writing on the back." Lila turned it over, in delicate script. "For my son, Elijah. May he grow up far from this house and its ghosts." Drew's voice was barely audible. I think she knew what was coming." Lila studied his face, the guilt, the grief, the faint hope that maybe, just maybe, redemption was possible. She handed the photo back. "Go home, Drew." As he walked away, Lila's father appeared at her side, his arm still in a sling from the prison fight that had nearly killed him. "You okay?" Lila watched Drew's car disappear down the road. "Yeah," she said finally. "I am." She turned back to her house, her home, where her mother was waving them in for dinner, where Rachel was pretending not to cry over burnt hamburgers, where the past could finally stay buried. Lila stepped inside and closed the door.